The prosecutor was saying 0 words. And then all of a sudden, she butts in and interrupts and says, Your Honor, did you hear he said my car? And that's the only time she spoke up the entire trial, was to point out the fact that I used a possessive term.
In court, everything's about possession. Possession, imagine there's a possessor of the heaven and earth. And this is kind of what I've been talking. I don't know. It's just a concept. Until you start living it, it's really not going to. It's actually quite blinding. Very hard to see.
Right.
So it's sort of imagining that there's a possessor of the heaven and earth, and basically, in whose hands is the breath of all life. Okay, so imagine every term that is spoken in thought and spoken out of the mouth is the property of the possessor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you speak, you're speaking from basically a hearsay. You're not coming as a little child which asks the questions. So that's why there's a fundamental principle to go by. Anything you say can and may be used against you. Okay, so anything you say, if you murmur anything, you say anything, any sort of words that come out of the mouth, it's going to be used against you because it's basically property that doesn't belong to you, and that's quite a trippy concept to conceive. People find that very strange, very hard to understand. It's basically, so it's listening to oneself, and that's why when you go to court, you're recording the court, so you can actually listen to how you speak, and then you can correct yourself. So it's very important. So whenever you hear, especially in court, you'll hear you got a lawyer. What do you mean by got?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't deal with that possessive term got, you're basically you're now subject to the laws of man. But when you ask, what do you mean by got? That changes everything.
I realize you've tried this. So what effect does it have for you?
Well, imagine they've got the guns and they're pointing the guns at you, right? And you ask the question, what do you mean by got? Their guns aren't drawn. They take 3 steps back.
Because there's no agreement, and that's what they know they're searching for? No, is that why?
Because there are forces on this rock or on this planet where we live on. There are forces that govern possession, and basically the informants, the agents, are doing the possessor's job by sorting the wheat from the chaff. So their job is to bring you a claim, to claim that you're making a claim that you're in possession. Their job is to basically make claims that you're in possession of the properties of the possessor's property.
So they're going around always assuming that everyone is taking possession of the possessor's property.
Correct, because court starts off, do you agree with the presumption of law? And everything that man speaks about is a presumption. Is it an assumption? Why is that? Because what does man know? Right? So man, he can't prove he knows anything. And if he can't prove he knows anything, what makes him think he knows anything? Right?
So why would you say anything?
So that's right. So you'd start asking. So if you can't say anything, what's left? The question. Right. So that's why you ask, what do you mean by have? When have you been drinking? What do you mean by have? Where is that your car? What do you mean by your? Get out of the car. What do you mean by get? Yeah. Have you got a lawyer? What do you mean by got? Yeah. And when you ask these questions, you're bringing the possessor here on the earth. You're bringing them down to speak on your behalf. You don't have to make a claim. You don't have to do anything. You just ask the question, and that's it. and it all gets sorted out. You never have to explain yourself or complain or anything. It all gets sorted out.
So do they try to move past you, or try to still see if you'll make some, agree with the claim they're bringing? Say
Oh,
I say, go ahead.
they will. They'll ask you several times to see whose master you serve, because in the scripture it says, "Choose this day who you serve."
Mm-hmm.
Right, and they need to make very sure who you serve. Just because you ask that question once, that, and you go, "What do you mean by your?" And then they go, "Oh, have you been drinking?" Then you go, "No, I haven't been drinking." Well, you're now fucked.
Right.
So you got to be constantly thinking and focusing on possession,
Right.
and on the possessive term, the have, the got, and all of that. And your, mine, is this yours? What do you mean by your? You need to incline the ear for possession, and never ever speak from the I statement. I didn't, I did. If you speak from I statement, you're speaking in front of the possessor of the heaven and earth, which is basically I am and the Father are one. And if that's true, what are you speaking before the Father for? Why are you speaking why are you speaking in front of the Father? If you stand behind, the Father, and that's like physics. It's like you've got the statement I am, and you've got the statement I am not, and then there's how do you zero out the I am not, and I am? How do you zero it out? Everything's got to come back to zero, and the 0 point is am I. And when you speak from am I, that's a completely different ball game.
I say, what do you mean by God? And they say, well, whatever. Where do you take it?
They don't explain anything. They just basically take everything out of your mouth, and they use that in court. Everything's used in court.
You asking for an explanation is something that they are unable to provide.
They can never, ever answer those questions.
Why is that?
Because see that no man knows it. This is all in the scripture. Jesus always used to say, see that no man knows it. Because no man knows who the Father of the heaven and earth is, but you can ask, who is there a Father of the heaven and earth? So it's very, very important to be able to start speaking in a way like parables, like what Jesus did. Are you the King of the Jews? Which is basically, are you the King of the owners? Are you saying that I am? Now, are you saying that I am? Does that mean that you are the King of the Jews? No. It means that you're asking, are you saying that I am? And there's a big difference, very, very big difference in asking as king or telling. If you're in telling mode, you're going to be in big trouble. And down here, if you're in telling mode, they lock you up in prison. They basically put you in a psych ward, or you go to jail straight away.
I heard you say on a previous call that the policemen know this because they're in and out of court. That's all they go to all the time.
Down here, they're very well trained in possession, brother. They're one of the most highly trained Centurions on the planet is here in Australia, because this is a prison island.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You probably know the history of Australia. It's a prison island. It's either paradise on earth or it's hell on earth for people. Right. So basically, it's down here. They're highly trained in possession, and if you make a claim, the claim is I am. If you speak anything from the possessive term, from possession, if you telling, for example, starting with I am, you basically go straight into jurisdiction. You go straight into basically the 1% is basically the 1/10 is basically the neutral, right? The neutral is, for example, is that your car? What do you mean by your? But then you mean the car. THE, the car, neutral, 1/10. The car, the house, the keys, the wife, the family, the holiday. When you start talking my holiday, my car keys, then you're going through the wood chipper. You really want to be careful about thinking that you believe you own something. That's the little devil inside us who we feed, and we don't correct ourselves or renew the mind. And that's where we get into perilous waters. The biggest thing is if there's a lot of young coppers in the area you live, what you can do is record every interaction you have with them, okay, and then you start living this, right? And they start learning from you. This is how it works down here. They are trained to study you. So what are they doing? I'm not doing, right? So I'm starting to train from them. So without them, we are unable to become aligned with the Almighty Father, which is the possessor of the heaven and earth. And if we start learning to ask without these coppers or centurions or legion, without them, how can we possibly learn or unlearn how to come to peace and live in this world without being at war?
The last thing the judge ever told me, he told me, he said, hey, man, I appreciate how you presented yourself in here. He said, you stayed on point. He said, most people want to tell their stories. He said, I appreciate your how you were in here. He said, I can see that you're an intelligent man. Sounded like a compliment. And then he goes, but he said, if I could give you one piece of advice, it would be to forget everything you think you know.
And there you go, brother.
Right.
There you go.
Right, brother.
Now listen here. He was showing you, because in the scripture, it's only the judge who's going to show you to become whole. And he actually showed you by he gave you a so-called compliment to the little devil who thinks it's intelligent, because intelligent is, when he says you're intelligent, he's just saying, you're very well programmed. And you've been programmed well by your family and your school and the society, but you really need to start going backwards to the place where you actually don't know anything. You don't know what you're talking about. So on one hand, he's giving you the compliment, but then on the other hand, he's saying it has no bearing or grounds here in the courts. I mean, you're not going to win from intelligence, if you know what I mean.
I'm only smart because I know nothing. Well, what can I know type thing. So
well, I know nothing means that you're still in possession of the term nothing. Bat always goes on about the claiming and all this claim stuff, but you're bringing up terminology. And down here, if you're bringing up terminology, it's going to backfire on you. Yeah, so if you bring up claim, if you start a lot of the stuff, and if you're bringing up a lot of that stuff, they'll send you to jail down here. Once you bring up a claim, where's the claimant and all this shit? You're bringing up terminology, which is basically property of the possessor. You don't own that property.
So the only thing that is appropriate to say is something related to what they say, listening to the possessive term, and if in the off chance there's no possessive term, you offer to help in question form.
Yeah, that's correct. But in court, it's another completely different world. Right. Why is that? Because in court, imagine going to court without a story and without terms. So you turn up, and then the judge goes, there's charges here, blah, blah. What do you want to do about them? And then you go, why am I here? And then the judge, he has to explain why you are here. And then that's when you go into, you're saying I was there. I'm doing this is a real head fuck of a whatever concept, because these questions, they go back to the foundations of the whole system, the foundation. So there's no grounds for, if this guy's asking these questions, everything turns into a complete opposite reality. It's a cycle of three questions. And the first question is, why am I here? That's the first question. The second question, is there a signed agreement between the parties on a piece of paper, before the judge? And the other one is, And the other question is, are you saying I was there?
Because business needs a time and a place.
Hey,
right?
Someone's picking up. There you go. That's a where and when.
How do you know that they need that though? Just by just by experimentation?
No, hang on a minute. It's all in the scripture. That's where basically a where and a when. Two people can only meet for a walk in the park with a where and when. Without a where and when, how can any two people ever meet? And that's the foundational law.
And the witness can never prove that time and date without your acknowledgement. Is that correct?
No one can prove anything until you verify it.
So why verify?
There you go. That's where you ask the question, and you start to study and listening. It's always in the first proposition that you ask the proper question.
Always.
And it's what?
Always in the first proposition.
Yes. Always in the first proposition, correct. And when I say to you that when you're asking these questions and they basically go away, you're not going to believe it. You actually go, what kind of world are we living in? And that's when it's very trippy and very like, what's going on here? Right. You ask a question and then they disappear. What's happening? Why is this happening? If you can't demonstrate anything, what's the use of anything, mate? If for example, if you say, "Oh, just listen to the heart," well, how do you listen to the heart when you got a gun pointed to your head, ready to blow your brains out? Listen to your heart, and then what's the best for everyone? Okay, what's the best for everyone? Okay, I'm going to blow your head off. That's the best for everyone. When you no longer exist, we can all live in peace.
Right.
So I'm going to blow your brains out, and that's how it is down here. Well, you'll cease to exist because you believe you exist.
Can you bring me to the leader?
Yeah, there you go. Take me to your leader. That's right.
And do you believe the police here would know what that means? Is that agreement signed?
But you go, is there a signed agreement between you and me, right, on a piece of paper before the judge? But then you say to them, before you do anything, right, you take me to the judge to verify a signed agreement between you and me on a piece of paper.
Oh, so you would ask them. So
yes.
If they try to ignore that, if they try to ignore the agreement question, you say, hey, before you do anything, can you bring me to the judge so we can verify this agreement?
Yes, but it's before you execute an order. So they're going to execute an order, right? Whatever the order is, they're going to execute it. But before they use restraining orders, they use all sorts of orders down here. A search and confiscation. They do all of that down here. This is confiscation world down here in Australia, and loving it. I love it down here. There's no other place in the world to live, mate. I love it. Why? Because it's so hot. It's like lava, mate. You got to be ready to burn and die in this moment, man. And when you're ready to burn and die, you're dying to what you believe. And that's what you believe in this moment. You're ready to die to what you think you know. Can you do it? That's what it's about. We're all here for each other. Remember that, okay?
Right on, brother.
All right. Lots of love to you, mate.
Same to you, brother. Have a good one.